Well, hello, Mr. Fritchie. Hello, anyone who might be watching this. My name is Chinamram Chiba, and on screen right now, you're seeing my city, and this is the city I designed in an application called SketchUp, and the name of the city is Chigbity. So the G is silent, just like in the name Chibo. And yeah, I'm gonna go through all of the requirements that it meets as a city, and why my city should be where you should move to next. Alrighty. So first of all, I just want to go through the basic features of the city. So I'm just going to gloss over it. So it has like a town hall, has like industrial farming. It has like these huge towers, and some of these are ups vertical farming towers. So inside the buildings, there are flowers and there are plants and there's stuff to sustain the entire population. And it's a fairly small population. This is located on an island off of Ecuador. It's like 600 kilometers west. It's like in the Galapagos Islands, like in that area. And invitation is only by when you get the letter in the mail or when you apply to come here. It's quite expensive to live in. And so, first of all, I'm just going to start with my business district. So this is just the overview, like from the top of the city, so you can see the different areas, and every area is split up, and I kind of quadrant it in a way. So if you go to the center of the city, this is the business district, and so in here you see like taller buildings. The reasons that these buildings aren't the tallest is that these tall buildings aren't, they're buildings, but it's they serve different purposes than regular buildings. Comparing these buildings here to like the smaller buildings which are at the outskirts of the city, these ones are clearly larger. These are homes to large businesses and cooperations, and they serve as a bustling like heart of the city in a way. And so next, I'm moving on to the center of the city. So this city, as you can see, there are many beautiful trees. Like this is the center, it's like a park. I almost modeled it a little bit after New York in a way. So kind of like Central Park. Like if we went back to the top view, you might see like it kind of reflects that. So you have like the water in the middle. And this is a man-made city. Like it's on top of an island, but everything else is unnaturally constructed. So that's why the rivers are so symmetrical and so like shaped. And so in the middle you have some boats and they're in a park, and you have people. If you see, there are people walking and people driving around, just standing, some people riding their bikes. And yeah, so on to the next scene. And those are my like industrial stuff. And so next, this is the residential areas. So you might be wondering, where are the houses? Very interesting question, Mr. Fritchie. Thank you for asking. Well, actually, the residents are inside these compartments. So that might be hard to imagine, but this is definitely not because I didn't have enough time to draw individual houses, but rather because these are like apartments. So inside of these houses are luxury suites. So you see how there's like lines that like quadrants of how many levels you have. So depending on how rich you are, you might be able to afford a few levels of an apartment, and these are all over the place. And notice how these are like sectioned off, like they're one big chunk and they come in chunks. That's for whenever there's an earthquake, like the buildings are grounded and the buildings are, even from the top, they're underground in a way. Not necessarily underground, but there's another top over the city, which is like a bunch of bike paths and stuff where you can travel around, as you can see this guy calmly doing. And so the city is designed in a way where you can get from place to place easily, and where your accommodations are modest from the outside, and from the top view, you might not even be able to tell that people are living here, but while it's a very populated city. Alright, on to the next thing. Okay, now this is a helicopter. Wow, interesting. So the reason I decided to opt out of having an airport in my city is because of what kind of city it is. So I wanted to make it a small city, not because making a large city would take an obscene amount of time, and this already did, but because a smaller city would be a better way to have very specific people in your city, because how I try to approach this is the perfect city that I would like living in. And so in the perfect city, the way I envision it, you have only specific people, and that's why you have the helicopters, because the helicopters, and these are industrial, and there are some all over the place. Like there's one here, and they come in a couple different shapes and sizes. This one is like a drone of sorts, and so the different helicopters, they go and they pick up the people from wherever they live, and they have lots of fuel, and they travel very long distances, and they go for round trips to wherever the person is, and they bring them back. And so it's kind of like a single passenger, double passenger deal. So you're going there with yourself, maybe your wife, probably no kids, because this is a very secluded space, and paying for them would be a bit too much for most people. And so you have different helicopters who go and they pick the people up, and that's one method of transport. There's another method of transport, and that is a seaport. That's not a very good angle, but this is a boat. You can clearly tell it's a boat because it's on water. And so this brings goods in and out of the city when they do need it. So boat is probably the easiest way to travel. So each of the boats, there's several scattered throughout the river, and they go in and out of the city like here through the canal, and they go around 500 kilometers, maybe 600, to Ecuador to pick up any goods that the people request personally, or if there's any local goods, the boats bring it in and they carry them all the way into the city. And then next, another method of transportation. I bet you weren't expecting this. Underground. Yes, that is a car. So this is modeled after Elon Musk's like boring company. Boring as in you bore holes into the earth. So a lot of people, when they envision the future, they envision flying cars. But with flying cars comes a lot of terrible infrastructure. So first of all, you're not releasing the problem. If you have flying cars, the traffic doesn't go away. You simply have people just higher up in the air. And then with flying cars would come possibly flying tracks over over the city, which would just lead to more danger. Flying cars. How about birds? How about the dealing with the temperature? There are a lot of different things that you would have to consider, and there's not unlimited space when you go up. Whereas going down and underground, you have the ability to not be in the way of anyone who's above ground and yet be able to go somewhere very quickly. So these are self-driving. So people put in the location they want, and there's like an interconnected web inside of the city almost that takes you wherever you want. So it just pops up at the location and you get inside and you zoom straight to your room. Pretty much. That's another method of transportation. And so this is how the cars travel. So they go in and out of the city and they go through the tunnels. Alrighty. So I have a couple facilities that I considered appropriate for the threshold. So that's the hospital, that's the police station, um, and there's a few other things that just I felt would be adequate considering there's a large population and he needs to sustain them. Despite um I thought very hard about this, about how I would power my city. I considered nuclear, I considered solar, and I decided on wind energy. So I did a tiny bit of research on the how the Galapagos Islands are, and considering that it is an island and there isn't much around it, the wind from the ocean, I would assume, would be enough to power the whole city. And so we got a couple windmills scattered all over the place. Helter skelter. Very specifically planned, obviously. Never mind, not helter skelter. And those are organized to gather as much wind as possible and would power the city. And then we have our um like the water and sewage system. So there's water and like sewage. There's like pipelines under the city that take the sewage from the people's homes and filter them and release them back into the ocean. It's not a perfect filtration system, but currently it is the best one we have in Chigbity. I repeat, Chigbity. What a great name, isn't it? And then next, we have my city. So just take a look. There's lots. it doesn't look as good as the pictures that are on my write-up. In my write-up, I go into a bit more detail as to why I made the choices I did. The reason it doesn't look as good is because it's not rendered and it's moving in real time. And also, I really appreciate this project. It was a great opportunity to dive into creating your own city and learning the ins and outs of what it takes and of what cities are made of. And I really enjoyed it. So thank you, Mr. Fritchie, and thank you, whoever's watching. Have a nice day.